Dear students, in this session you will study about the introduction to the first chapter in your syllabus, that is living world. The first unit is diversity in living world. Diversity in living world, and this unit, diversity in the living world, carries 17 marks. Okay, it carries 17 marks for your theory examination. In this unit, so you could find there are 4 chapters. The first chapter, it is living world. The living world. The second chapter, it is biological classification. The third chapter, it is plant kingdom, and the fourth chapter, it is animal kingdom. So as the name tells, the unit name, diversity in the living world. Diversity means variety. Variety of living organisms are being found on the earth surface. Diversity, vaividhyate, we can find different types of living organisms. Bere bere tara prani, pakshigalu, okay, so ella present irutte. Okay, so we could find there are different types of living organisms present on the earth surface. So, studying of all these living organisms is a branch that we call it as a taxonomy. Okay, so which deals with the classification, naming of organisms. So, in this unit, so there are 4 chapters that basically deals with the taxonomy and classification of living organisms. So in the first chapter, okay, so you will study the basic procedures of the taxonomic hierarchy, and why do we need classification, and how can we classify the living organisms, that we study there in the first chapter, that is living world. The second chapter, biological classification, as the name itself tells. So how can we classify the living organisms? So there are different biologists who have been involved in the classifying of living organism, but it was the R.H. Whittaker's 5 kingdom classification which has been widely accepted, and it is being followed now today. Yes, so that is 5 kingdom classification proposed by R.H. Whittaker. There are 5 kingdoms, that is kingdom Monera, Protista, Mycota, Plantae and Animalia. Kingdom Monera includes prokaryotic organisms like bacteria, different types of bacteria. Yes, and Mycota, it is kingdom, the Mycota includes fungi, chlorophyllus, eukaryotic multicellular organisms. Mycota includes fungi. The only kingdom in which we could find the unicellular organism, it is the kingdom Protista. Okay, kingdom Protista ಒಳಗೆ ಏಕಕೋಶ ಜೀವಿಗಳನ್ನ ಕಾಣಬಹುದು. ಬಟ್ ಬಾಕಿ ಎಲ್ಲದು ಮೊನೆರಾ ಆಗಿರ್ಬೋದು, ಮೈಕೋಟಾ ಆಗಿರ್ಬೋದು, ಪ್ಲಾಂಟೆ ಆಗಿರ್ಬೋದು, ಆರ್ ಆನಿಮಲಿ, 4 ಕಿಂಗ್ಡಮ್ಸ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ವಿ ಕುಡ್ ಫೈಂಡ್, ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಯಾವ್ದು ಕಾಣಬಹುದು, ಬಹುಕೋಶ ಜೀವಿಗಳು. ಸೊ ದ ಓನ್ಲಿ ಕಿಂಗ್ಡಮ್ in which we can find the unicellular organisms, it is the kingdom Protista. So here in this chapter the three kingdoms in detail: Kingdom Monera, Kingdom Protista, and Kingdom Mycota. Yes. Apart from that, you will study about viruses, lichens. You will study it biological classification. According to R.H. Whitaker, 5 kingdoms. So another 2 remaining are the Kingdom Plantae and Kingdom Animalae. So the third chapter, it is Plant Kingdom. The plants are being categorized. Kingdom Plantae is being categorized into 5 divisions: algae, Thallophyta, Bryophyta, Pteridophyta, Gymnospermae and Angiospermae. So that 5 divisions, you will study it in the plant kingdom. And one more kingdom remaining, it is the animal kingdom. So animals are multicellular, they are eukaryotic, heterotrophic organisms. So animals are being grouped into vertebrates and invertebrates and vertebrates, and which has been categorized into different phylums. Okay, so this unit 1, diversity in a living world, so has 4 chapters which mainly deals with the classification of living organism and the study of all the living organisms present on the earth's surface. And this unit carries 17 marks. The first chapter, it is the living world. So coming to the first chapter, living world, as the name itself tells, living world. What do we mean by living? Living means it is a state of being alive. It is a state of being alive. State of being alive is called as living. To be alive, it is called as living. There are different types of living organisms, irrespective whether it is unicellular, multicellular. Yes, so it has its own morphological features, it has its own anatomy. So there is varieties. They are unique. All living organisms are unique by themselves. Okay, so they are being found living in different kinds of habitat. Okay, so whether if you take the oceans, or it might be the freshwater bodies like the lakes, rivers, ponds, or it might be in the grasslands, forest, or it might be in the hot springs. Everywhere we can find the living organisms are being found. Yes, so there are different types of living organisms existing on the earth surface, and that forms the living world. So now a question, how to study of all these living organisms. Okay, so it is how to classify, yes, how to name these living organisms. Okay, so there is the branch that is called as taxonomy. Okay, so living means a state of being alive. alive. So here in this chapter you will be studying topics to be studied in the first chapter. It is characteristic features of living organisms, the procedures involved in taxonomy, binomial nomenclature. Yes, so what is bi? Bi means two. Naming of living organisms with two words, scientific name. Yes, living organisms, they have two words, scientific names. Like Homo sapiens, man. Okay, man, the scientific name of human is Homo sapiens. Mango, Mangifera indica. Yes. So likewise, we could find the living organisms, it is been named by the two words scientific name. That naming of two words two words scientific names to the living organism, it is called as binomial nomenclature. Yes. Next is taxonomic categories and taxonomical aids. So these are the topics which you will study it in this chapter. So first in the characteristic features, in the detail you will study. So how you can differentiate living biotic components from abiotic components, living as well as non-living things. Which are those characteristic features? Like for example, growth. It might be reproduction, or it might be consciousness, or it might be cellular organization. Like that, the characteristic features you will be studying. Procedures in a taxonomy. What are the different steps, techniques in the taxonomy? First, we have to identify a particular organism. Then only we can undergo the study, characterization, identification. Then second is characterization. Then we can study about the characteristic features. When we know about the characteristic features, then only we can start naming to the living, or we can start providing the name, nomenclature. Yes. Then the last is we can put into a specific groups. Okay, that is called as classification, characterization, identification, nomenclature and classification. So these are the different steps in taxonomy. So binomial nomenclature, now I have told, it is the naming of living organisms with 2 words, scientific names. Taxonomic hierarchy, which includes the arrangement of taxonomic categories in a systematic manner, one after the other, from species to the kingdom. Yes? From species to the kingdom, arrangement of different taxonomic categories, species, genus, family. Yes, we could find order, class, phyla, kingdom. So what are these? These are different. They are the categories. Species is a category. Kingdom is a category. Species is the lowest category. Kingdom is the highest category. So we could find these taxonomic categories. They are being arranged in a systematic manner, and that arrangement of taxonomic categories, it is called as taxonomic hierarchy. Yes? So by theoretical, by ಮಾತಿಂದ ನಾವು ಹೇಳ್ಬೋದು ಆರ್ಗಾನಿಸಮ್ಸ್ ನ ಸ್ಟಡಿ ಮಾಡಬಹುದು ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿ. ಆದರೆ ಹೆಂಗ್ ಸ್ಟಡಿ ಮಾಡಬಹುದು? ಇಟ್ ಈಸ್ ಬೈ ದ ಹೆಲ್ಪ್ ಆಫ್ taxonomical aid. Okay, what is aid? Aid means the techniques, procedures, the things that helps us to study about living organisms. You might have seen in your school, in your classrooms, you could find the charts which would be hung. By seeing the chart, you could copy the digestive system and you will get a picture. Yes, digestive system in man. Nam body ಒಳಗೆ ಈ ಥರ ಇರುತ್ತೆ digestive system. ಫ್ಲವರ್ ಇಂದು ಯಾವ ಥರ ಇರುತ್ತೆ ಪಾರ್ಟ್ಸು, ಫ್ಲವರ್ ಅಂದರೆ ಹೆಂಗಿರುತ್ತೆ. ಸೊ ಒಂದು ಚಾರ್ಟ್ ನೋಡಿ ನೀವು ಹೇಳ್ಬೋದು. ಎಸ್, ಟೈಗರ್ ಪಿಕ್ಚರ್ ಹಾಕಿರ್ತಾರೆ, ಚಾರ್ಟ್ ಹಾಕಿರ್ತಾರೆ ವಾಲ್ ಮೇಲ್ಗಡೆ. ಎಸ್, ಅದು ನೋಡ್ಬೋದು, ಹೇಳ್ಬೋದು ಈ ಥರ ಇರುತ್ತೆ ಟೈಗರ್ ಅಂದರೆ. ಎಸ್, ಹುಲಿ ಅಂದರೆ ಈ ಥರ ಇರುತ್ತೆ. ಸೊ taxonomical aids are the things, the techniques or the procedures which helps us to study about the living organisms, which helps in taxonomy. It might be characterization, identification. Yes, so it helps, hence the name as taxonomic aids, which includes, which you will be studying, that is herbarium, botanical gardens, biological museum, zoological parks and key. So you could find the taxonomical aids are herbarium, botanical garden, biological museum, zoological park and a key. So in detail you will study all these in this chapter, that is the first chapter, living world. So you could find there are so many living organisms, varieties of living organisms which have been found on the earth surface. Among these varieties of living organisms, there is very variability. Yeah, so we could find varieties and variability among living organisms. That variety and variability among living organisms, so that is called biodiversity. It is the short form of two words, biological diversity. Biological diversity. Biological diversity can be defined as variety and variability among the living organisms. So there are different types of varieties of living organisms, and among them we can find variability. Yes, so variety and variability among living organisms is called as biodiversity. So here in this chapter, so we will study about the living organisms, how can we study such huge amount of living organism, how can it be studied, how can it be named, how can it be classified, what is the need for classification, how can we classify the living organisms. Ernst Mayr, an important, yes, it might be asked for your NEET examination. It was once asked. Ernst Mayr, a famous biologist, a taxonomist. Ernst Mayr, considered as Darwin of 20th century, as well as he was a person to give biological species concept. He was the first person to give biological species concept. So he was called as Darwin of 20th century, that is Ernst Mayr. So now you have, yes, an idea that what you will be going to study in your first chapter, that is the living world. So in the next session you will study about the characteristic features of living organisms. Thank you.